folks, my name's Philip. This is Turtle Studios, and this is my Mexican-made Fender Strat. So this is a video I've been thinking about and sort of ruminating on making for a while. The clickbaity title of this video is, of course, that this guitar cost me thousands. That's not necessarily a sum of the parts and the upgrades I've put into it, but rather, this was, for all intents and purposes, my first electric guitar. It's what I learned on and what ultimately started me down that road. It's what inspired me to learn early on. It's the guitar I wanted early on, and it's what ultimately got me to this point here now. I'm in a room full of different guitars and different styles of guitars, different brands of instruments, and of course over the years I've spent tons of money on gear and upgrades and all sorts of things. This particular guitar was given to me as a gift by someone important to my family, and it holds sentimental value because of that. And not only that, it now has a pretty storied and long history with myself personally, so it's something I could never really get rid of. This guitar does have a bit of an interesting history though. When I was originally thinking about making this video, I was going to go over all the different things that went wrong with this guitar and kind of talk about the upgrades I've made, maybe compare the parts and some things I liked and I didn't. Because in reality, calling this my Mexican-made Fender Strat is a little bit inaccurate. The only stock part on this guitar is the body. Everything from the bridge to the pickguard to the pickups, the output jack, the neck, the tuners on the neck, everything has been replaced. I don't know what it was. Maybe this particular guitar was a dud. Something Fender was doing at the time wasn't producing the best quality instruments. And I've had just about every issue you could potentially have on a guitar. I've done every setup, every adjustment. Anything that could break has broken over the years, and anything that needed to be replaced has been. As I look back, I realized, out of the box, this guitar really had no real setup on it for some reason. I distinctly remember a moment several years ago when I was watching some videos from Phil McKnight and some similar channels going over setting up a Stratocaster and realizing all these tweaks and things I could do to make the guitar play better. There was a lot that went wrong with this guitar. The bridges they included stock in these were really pretty cheap. It had a screw-in style trim arm, which is never ideal. Something about the block they were including on the tremolo was just made out of a really soft material, and the arm actually stripped out of the threads after about a year or two of regular use. I was taking this back and forth to friends' houses, taking the arm in and out of the body to put it in my gig bag, and it just wore out. The original toggle switch was kind of muddy and would easily switch in between the different positions. The pickups were fine. I never really connected with them. They weren't my favorite sounding. The original neck, which I have over here, had all sorts of fret sprout, which I corrected several times over the years, and the frets really have just worn down. It needs a fret job, which is why I still have this, and that's just something I need to get around to doing. The original tuners even had issues. They tune fine, but the little plastic washers that separate the button from the tuning machine wore out and got brittle over time, and several of them fell off, which is kind of weird. That's never really an issue I've had with the guitar. I've lived in the same climate my whole life. It didn't go through any major temperature changes, so I don't really know what happened. And it's worth mentioning, Fender has since improved these guitars. The Mexican-made series is now what they call the Player series. The price has gone up, albeit, but they do have some higher quality components in those now. And of course, they now have the Standard series, which does fit into a lower price range. And price point and quality components aside, I don't really think that's where the value in these guitars lies. Brands like Fender and like Gibson are sort of household names now. They're well recognized. And the reality is you pay a premium for that. And there are some benefits to that, of course. They're a well-known commodity. They would hold their value on the used market, so you'd have no problem selling one of these used, at least if it was in stock condition, which this one is not anymore. And they might even increase in value. You see this with a lot of the American-made stuff, Gibson, and so on. This particular guitar now has sentimental value and holds a history to me, but originally the value in it was that it was a name brand instrument. And if name brand matters to you, that's perfectly valid. If the brand on the headstock and the shape of the headstock being iconic is something that's important to you, that's perfectly valid. But I don't think these guitars offer the best value per dollar. And so to continue on with this discussion, I want to talk about something that I think does. This is a Stratocaster style guitar from Firefly. At the time of this video, you could pick these up for like $260 about there. And this is what I would consider a real value guitar. The specs on these is really kind of wild for what you're paying. It, of course, has this crazy rosewood finish. It has stainless steel frets, locking tuners, a bone nut, pickups, which I think sound pretty decent. It has a nice 2-point trim that stays in tune pretty well when you use it, and probably some other things I'm forgetting about. If you've been around the guitar, YouTube, online gear space for any amount of time, you've probably heard about Firefly. They're an interesting brand and they definitely had some duds, but there's no denying that they're making some pretty great stuff now. And this is, of course, not the only guitar in this category. There are tons of other brands like Harley Benton and which are two guitars I have back there. I've seen some impressive stuff from Fesley recently. The Squier Classic Vibe series has some really impressive and really cool stuff now. And you, of course, have some awesome offerings from Schecter, some other cheaper Ibanez's, and tons of other brands I'm forgetting about. This is by no means an exhaustive list. Whether you're looking for a quality backup instrument, something to do mods and upgrades on, or just great value and a great player for the price, these are awesome offerings. And that is where the value in these lies. True value per dollar spent. The headstocks might look goofy on some of these, but if the brand and the shape of the headstock doesn't matter to you and you really care about the specs of the guitar, how it plays, and how it feels, these are an awesome option. And it's my personal opinion that guitars like this could potentially be future classics. They could hold their value and increase because things like the Firefly guitars are made in limited quantities and limited runs. Personally, this is my favorite category of guitar, so I am a little biased here. I love getting guitars in this price point, partially because if I'm being honest, working on guitars is about half the fun for me. I enjoy the process of setting up guitars, upgrading components, making them my own, and making really great players out of something that wasn't too much money to start with. So to me, that's what gives guitars in this category value. But there are other things that could give an instrument value, so we're going to move on. If you've seen some of the previous videos on my channel, you've probably seen this guitar. This is the Strat, which I was sent to review. Full transparency, Stritch did send this out, and they have worked with me in the past to review some different stands and accessories. They make some pretty cool stuff, so if you're in the market for that kind of thing, you could check them out. But anyways, this guitar looks nothing like it did in its stock form. I have done some pretty major upgrades to it, and that's not necessarily something I would recommend. It, of course, is an HH guitar. I've replaced the bridge, I've replaced the tuners, I've done a lot of work to it. The reality is I've probably put just about as much value in components into this guitar as the original guitar cost itself. And that kind of doesn't make sense. This was one of those sub $200 starter kit guitars. It came with the guitar, some extra strings, a strap, a little battery powered amp, and so on. And for the most part, it was kind of what you expect in that price point. It needed some setup out of the box. The bridge didn't work super well. The neck needed to be hydrated. The tuners weren't the best. It had some issues, but for the price, you can't really complain. And of course, price is the value of these guitars. They come in at such a low price that if you truly are a beginner, there's really no barrier to entry, except maybe some issues you could have a guitar, which is definitely a risk at that price. The price being low is also potentially valuable to someone like myself that likes to work on guitars. Or maybe you're trying to learn how to set up guitars and want something cheap you can practice on without having to worry about damaging it. For me, I also like this style of guitar because I can do wild modifications like this. And this is by no means as wild as you can get. You could repaint the guitar. I've gotten guitars in this price point before to completely strip away the finish and do some other stuff with as well. It can be a pretty fun thing to work with because you get all the bones of a playable and workable guitar, and with a little bit of knowledge and time and know-how, you can turn it into something really neat. So, price as a value. But I have one other category I want to talk about. This is a partscaster I put together, and it's the last Strat style guitar I want to talk about here today. It's sort of this weird combination of all the features and specs I've learned I like on guitar over the years, some stylistic choices that I think are attractive and unique, and some specs which are unique to my collection at least. This guitar has two P90 shaped humbuckers, and P90s aren't pickups that I actually have in any other guitars. So yeah, it's a pretty cool guitar, at least in my opinion. And it's not perfect. The body of this was actually a blem that I purchased on discount. The nut has some glue on it from where the wood actually chipped when I was trying to replace the one that came with it, and frankly some other imperfections that you would see if you looked up and down the guitar closely. But this guitar undeniably has mojo. It's that sort of mystical, meme-worthy weird thing we all talk about. This guitar truly feels great to play. It has a roasted maple neck that feels great in your hand. Something about the combination of the neck and the body make it really balanced and comfortable to sit with and stand with and play. It's really acoustically resonant, which makes it vibrate and resonate and feel just great in the hand. And it, of course, has some important components like a bridge that works really well and holds tune, locking tuners that make string changes really nice, a nut that is cut correctly despite some imperfections in the finish. It really is a great playing guitar. It might not be for everyone, but I love the look, I love the feel, I love how it sounds, and right now it's the guitar I'm reaching for the most often in my collection when I play at home. This guitar is uniquely mine. It's spec'd exactly how I wanted it to be. I put it together with my own two hands, and to me, it holds some real value because of that. So anyways, those are just some of my opinions on what gives a guitar value and some different areas where different guitars hold value. I don't really know if I've made a real concrete point here, but I do feel like I've covered what I wanted to say on these different guitars at least. I want to know your opinions on this though. What is your favorite guitar, for example, or your most valuable guitar in your collection? What separates guitars that you might pass along and sell from ones that are lifelong keepers? And as always, thanks for watching and stay tuned for more guitar content.